We had a problem. We wanted to increase the production value of our live streams at the performance horse events that we stream all over the United States without the increased cost of extra help, camera people, hotels, cables, running power cords, and all the headaches that come with adding additional cameras. That's when a colleague of mine introduced me to the BirdDog P200. He showed me that with one Cat5 cable connected over NDI over the network, he could control, receive video, and power that camera, all with one cable. Since then, we have now added 3 BirdDog P200s, the new PH120, as well as 2 BirdDog Studios, bringing them all over the NDI network with one input into our vMix production. This has been huge to help keep cables and help to a minimum, help keep our costs down and increase the production value for our client, which was our ultimate goal. As we travel from show to show, sometimes we only have a couple of hours to get set up. So having the ability to set each camera up with just one cable and not have to source out power outlets, power cords, and everything else that goes along with it, it helped keep our setup time to a minimum while still allowing us to add more cameras for the production. The quality of the camera and the footage is incredible, and being able to control all these over the NDI network with one input makes it a no-brainer for us to use the BirdDog products. With the ability to place these cameras virtually anywhere, it allows us to bring in more camera angles and give us more freedom to place those cameras where we need them the most, whether it's an interview on the side of the arena or the action from up above or down below. We can capture any angle with minimum cables. When one of my dogs chewed through a cable, I emailed BirdDog to see if I could get a replacement cable. Within minutes, they emailed me back and said that they were sending a new replacement cable to the location we were at. It did not affect our production one bit. Thank you, BirdDog. At Performance Horse Central, we're always looking for new ways, better ways to increase our production. BirdDog has helped us do that and bring that quality to our clients. BirdDog, thank you very much. We couldn't do it without you.
What is going on, everybody? Thanks for joining us today, and we are going to kick things off here. First things first, evidently, today is coffee day here at on the BirdDog show, and so okay, just want to check my audio on YouTube. So it's coffee day, and I don't know why it's officially been made coffee day, but anyways, we've got on recommendation, we're trying instant espresso coffee. And so we're going to find out what BirdDogJon is like on espresso. That'll be fun. I've also got if that doesn't cut it, I've got a triple latte also on recommendation from, this one's from Jeremy Kloosterman. So there's that. And of course, my Ember mug is there as well. So good times. And fun little addition to today's show is I'm going to invite a buddy of mine that we've been working with here for a little while named Judson. So Judson is hanging out. How's it going, man? Hopefully, can you hear me all right? Because I can hear you.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm on a little bit of a delay here.
No problem. Yeah, thanks for jumping on. And I think you had coffee delivered as well. So that's always good. Thanks for jumping on. And I think you had wait for you to catch up here. Whoops. Awesome. So, Judson, let's just get into it with you for a little bit before we go down this coffee path.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. So, Judson, let's just get into. Wow, you are on quite a delay. We go down this coffee path.
Yeah. Thank you.
You are on quite a delay. So how are you viewing the show, Judson? Just curious. So how are you viewing the show, Judson? Curious. All right. Well, I'm gonna work this out with Judson in the private chat, and we will we'll get back to it with him in just a second. Hey, what's going on, Bugsy? Good morning. Hopefully you're doing well. Morning, you too. Good to see you. Okay, so let me. I'm gonna chat with Judson a bit on the private thing here, and then I'm gonna bring him back in. Just curious. So, alrighty. So you guys today again, like I said, it's kind of like a weird. It didn't intend for this to happen, but it ended up being a coffee day. And so we've got some espresso, and we're going to see what that does to me, if anything. Who knows? The instructions are a little bit vague, and unfortunately, I don't have accurate measuring abilities. And so it says in a coffee cup, add 1 teaspoon, which I don't have a teaspoon measurement, of your instant coffee to 6 fluid ounces of hot water or milk. Stir and enjoy. So I did, I think, the correct measurements. If it is correct, then I'm not 100% sure about this. It doesn't smell very good, but when I added the creamer, at least it turned it into a latte, I was told. So I had a tiny little bit of creamer, and then it got turned into that. So, yeah, I'm not too sure about that. And the taste is a little bit off for me, but what do you expect for instant coffee? So, all right, let's see. Hey, what's going on, Judson?
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate
Hey,
it.
what's going on?
Not too much, just chilling and enjoying the show.
Excellent. Excellent. So for those people that you've hung around the show for like what, 2.5, 3 years now. I've never
Right.
had you on, but
Right.
we've also I've worked with you on tickets, and I think we've had phone calls, but
Yep.
it's all kind of a blur now, so you would know probably better than me. Um yeah, bring things espresso. Yeah, no, espresso, right? I had it spelled wrong on the stream initially yesterday, so I had to change it. Anyway, catch people up. Like where do you fit in the NDI world? Where are you located, and what are you doing with this sort of stuff?
Yeah. So we run a company called Quincy Owen Solutions, and we're just north of Seattle. We kind of serve the Pacific Northwest region. We've gone as far as Wyoming with bird
Oh
dog
wow.
products. But yeah, so we run this little integration company that helps out primarily churches, but we also spill over into education and corporate work as well. And we've installed a lot of bird dog. But one of the things that we kind of specialize in is a lot of automation.
Right.
So we do a lot of kind of custom integration where we're getting multiple systems to work well together, make it volunteer friendly, or kind of non-tech geek friendly, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's the world that I live in, mostly because people buy what could be sophisticated technology, right? And then they're trying to get people to learn how to use it, but not only get people to use it, but people that don't have any background or any sort of like foreknowledge as to how any of this is supposed to work. And granted, it takes time to kind of tune it a bit, but it's helpful if your people know something.
Right.
So yeah, what it is that you do is pretty much right up the same alley as to what we spend a lot of time doing and what I do kind of on off the clock, if you will.
Mhm.
But yeah, just trying to get people up to speed and get it to a certain level of acceptability and that sort of thing. But also, so I'm curious then with you like in the worlds that you run in. First question I have then is how do you deal with installations, congregations, whatever, that don't really know what they want? Like, do you help them formulate like a vision of what it could be, or do you just say, well, figure that out and then come talk to me? Or where do you step in on that process?
We try to talk about, what's their goal, what's their vision, what's their passion, what is it that they're trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
And, of course, everybody would love to have the best production possible for, the least amount of money. And so that's kind of one of the things that, Bird Dog has been a really amazing tool for that
Mm,
because, leveraging the power of network, the network is cheap and custom video solutions are expensive. So,
right.
if we can get in there and kind of say like, yeah, I don't need you to tell me technically what you want. Just give me an idea. Let's find out this picture together,
Yeah.
and then let me sort out the details. We've kind of predicated and built our whole business on the idea that there's sort of like the visionary of an organization that on the one hand kind of has this idea,
Right.
and then but they don't know how to talk tech, and then on the other side you got all the tech dudes, and these guys don't talk the same language. And
Yeah.
so we've built our business on the idea that we speak both fluently.
Nice. Yeah, I always find that really the places that I get stopped, like the conversations that always hit brick walls for me, is helping. So in a okay, so in a church situation, you have leaders who could be creative or not. Either some sort of eldership or some sort of whatever, people that steer the ship. And then there are the creative people who are usually the folks that are on stage, so worship ministers or pastors or whoever. And then you have the technical crew who generally isn't super creative, like they're not that side of the brain, they're more technical, they're more like they know how to achieve the goal, but they need to know what the goal is. And so you have the creative people in the middle, right? And then you've got the leadership on one side, which generally, again, most of the time built up of, now this is just my experience, most of the time built up of like business people, who are really good at making executive decisions. But when it comes to like really talking about things that will connect, on various levels with their congregation, that's not a language they speak. So the creative people are tasked with that. And then how to achieve the goal. Now you need this conversation, which is where you find yourself between, as to like bridging that gap between, okay, the creative side, here's what the vision is, and then, how to actually pull it off. Here's the technical side of that. Right. So I always find that, everybody really wants to get it done, but like, how do you formulate what it should be? Or like, what questions do you ask to like, what is it that you hope to achieve? And then if the answer is, we don't really know what to achieve, we just know that we need to stream. It's like, okay, well, then like we should talk about what you want that final product to look like. What do you want people to encounter when they come across you on YouTube? What is it that you're offering that will resonate with the community that you're serving or that you're trying to serve, and that sort of thing. So anyways, it gets into like all these different discussions. Yes. It's not just about like, oh, this is what you want. Well, it's 3 cameras and a keyboard. If it was that easy.
I'll try to get into the conversation about, what kind of emotional response do you want people to have when they experience your content?
That's a great question.
Them to feel like, oh, I learned something. Do you want them to feel like, oh, I'm emotionally involved? Do you want them to feel like they're there? So, like one of the churches we work with uses like 4 or 5 cameras. Most of them are wireless. They're running around on stage. They're getting up close, tight shots of drums and everything.
Yeah.
And it's very exciting and engaging. Other people go, that's way too fancy for us.
Right.
So like they're, like I've worked with churches that really have no technical staff. I've installed, 3 PTZ cameras that are on an automation loop, and we basically make it look like it's being produced, but it's all automated.
Interesting. What do you use for the automation backend?
Wirecast for that.
Oh, okay. Nice.
That Wirecast is really simple to do because you can create a shot playlist.
Yeah.
You create one for worship, create one for, the message, and it will just kind of take shots. Maybe while when it pulls up camera 2, it's going to re-aim camera 3 in preparation for the next scene.
Right.
So,
So is there any manual execution, or is it like pretty much all an all automated stream?
Like a person has to open the software and start the stream, and then basically push the automation, take that first shot. Once they take that first shot, then it's going automated.
So how do you achieve that then? Like, I'm just curious about, like, do you have to do blocking on stage so that people are in shots, or do you, am I missing something?
Yeah, I mean, the kind of place where that's going to happen is, and I don't want to put everybody in a box, but
sure.
The typical church that's going to have that type of automation employed is going to be one where like that piano hasn't moved in 30 years.
Right.
So it's not likely to move next week.
Right.
And so with that, we can kind of set shots up that will just work. And, also maybe not as tight of a shot as you might get if it was produced. You could kind of go a little wider shot. But yeah, and then the ones where, hey, the band is changing every week and who knows, whatever. It's like, yeah, you need people to run this. There's no amount of yet.
Yeah, I'm just always curious what other people are doing. You've got a lot of exposure to folks in the industry, and so it's good to hear, what folks are doing and how they're making that connection through the stream, because it really is a disconnect. I mean, people are used to watching shows on TV which they are not involved in, and so if you put up your church community or your whatever community up there, you know, how do you bridge that gap to where it's like, no, you are a part of this, or you are, you know. So it's a much further like philosophical question than it is more just about like, how does NDI work. But we find ourselves in those conversations, even at the support desk. I mean, we find ourselves in that conversation because people buy cameras, but then they still don't feel like they're achieving their goal even after, you know, 3 cameras and a keyboard deal.
Right.
They're still feeling like there's a disconnect, or that it's not professional enough, or that they can't get the coloration right, and that's causing to have some sort of barrier. And you know, so then we get into these conversations about, well, what are you trying to achieve? Like, what do you want? Are you wanting it like this intimate, you know, you're right there with them, you know, in this moment, or are you trying to produce something that looks more like a, you know, like a lecture style production, or what is it that you're doing? So yeah, I'd be curious to know. Oh, and Bugsy says, good morning, Judson.
Hey, Bugsy. Also known as Zach.
Yes. And I love my morning coffee. Yeah, me too, Ben. I really appreciate that. Hey, thanks for jumping in here. John's got all the espresso today. I don't know. Is this espresso? This is a latte. So technically, I guess, yes. I'm already on like 4 cups of coffee, and there's another 4 cups in my office. And so after the show, here's why though, is our buddy Senseless, who is my primary ticketing agent, has a couple of days off. And so it takes the whole office to handle his ticket load, which would make him feel good. But yeah, it's the whole office is all hands on deck. And I'm also doing some other things. We're having some issues with our email authentication, so I'm handling that and doing tickets. And I've got our interview today with Judson. And so yeah, espresso is on order because we're gonna need to get through today full power. So there you go.
This is my first cup, but it is 4 shots.
Wow. Yeah, that's now you said West Coast, right? So that's like what, 8 o'clock over there?
Yeah. We start. Yeah, 8 o'clock was our start time today with this.
I was just out there. I didn't have time to travel around Seattle or go north of Seattle, but I was just out there. We sailed out to Alaska with my kids, and I went with my kids and my wife.
Awesome.
So we were in Seattle for a day overnight, and yeah, really jacked things up with leaving at like 5. The flight was at like 5 o'clock, and then we went to Vegas, and we had a 2-hour layover there. But we were in Seattle by lunch, and for us, that's like 4 o'clock, right? It's 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but it's lunch, and so we like went to the hotel. They let us check in early, and then we waited around for a bit, and then the kids, it was like well past their nap time at this point, so it was like, all right, well, that's out the window. So we ended up at Denny's or something. And yeah, that was
I've got a friend who says nobody goes to Denny's, but lots of people end up there.
That's true. So okay, nerd alert. So I overplan everything, and so I did like a street view, and I walked down the street on Google Maps just to see what was around, like what's available for us to go to in walking distance and not needing an Uber and all that stuff. Plus, I got a 4-year-old, so then we would need a car seat and a jumper and like all that. I just wanted to walk there. So Denny's was across the road, and I was like, well, worst case scenario is we end up at Denny's, and that is exactly where we ended up for lunch, dinner. But anyways, it was fine. It was the expected experience at Denny's with the added, there were some folks outside that were, let's say, not in control of all of their faculties. But it's Seattle, so that you're going to run across that. Anyways, yeah, that was an interesting explanation to an 8-year-old, but we do what we have to do. So
I've got 7 kids, and one of my last times downtown, I had 2 or 3 of them with me, and there was a homeless person who was missing some clothes, and so that was again, that was a heck of an experience to explain.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like in a city like Seattle, you just have to have a bag of stuff in the trunk, and as you see a need, you fill a need type of thing.
That's right.
That's anyways, that was Seattle. It was a very eye-opening experience that not all cities. I mean, Detroit has its own set of problems, right? That's where we're at. So it's like, okay, we got our own set of problems, but the city is slowly rebuilding, and there's a
Yep.
lot of good things happening, and a lot of community spaces that are coming back. There's still whole like city blocks of abandoned homes or like should be abandoned homes, but people are living there. Where they like shut off the power 4 or 5 years ago and never turned it back on. There's that
Wow.
sort of thing going on, but it is slowly creeping back, and people are investing in it, rebuilding buildings or demoing things and like rebuilding city blocks. So it's been really cool to watch. I've been here for way too long, for like 15 years, and so I saw it when it was kind of like rock bottom, and now it's slowly creeping back. But Seattle is a whole different ballpark, and I knew that before we went. We had been in 2019, so we kind of knew what we were walking into. But anyways, we did end up at the Denny's, and it was across from the airport. What was really nice is we had this hotel. Now, now these are things you probably don't care about at all. We had this hotel that was facing the airport, and so the kids walked out on this little tiny balcony that we had, but they stood up there for hours and watched the airplanes. And I was like, okay, well, that's an easy way to.
Yeah, my kids would totally do that.
Yep. And it was like we were on like the 6th or the 8th floor or something like that. So it was high up enough where you could see the airplanes going out onto the tarmac and like taxiing out, and then going down the runway. So and when we flew out of Seattle, then the next week we followed that path. So I was like, remember, like there's the hotel. We like looked out the window. I was like, there's the hotel we were in, and we're now in one of these airplanes that is about to take off. So they could kind of make a full circle connection.
It's a cool experience.
Yeah, it really was. Anyway, so yeah, I was out your neck of the woods. Now you said you're north of Seattle, but you stretch over into the Midwest, or?
Yeah, I mean, we typically work in Washington and Oregon, spill over a little into Idaho, but we've done quite a bit of work with a client in Wyoming.
Oh.
So, and then I don't know really how this has happened, but we've also been doing just some remote consulting with people all over the place. So Boston and Florida and just different places. We've had manufacturers, like we've had Bird Dog kind of call us out online before. And then we've also had like Symmetrics call us out online. And so then people, give us a call and we help out with their projects.
Nice. Yeah, you keep doing good work, and your name's going to start spreading around, so.
Right.
That's how that goes.
One of the things that's been kind of cool too we've been working using the kind of the API that's built into the Bird Dog products. So we're able to, get control systems to do things that maybe an end user might find complicated.
Right.
But we can put it onto a touch screen where it's just you're switching source from DVD to Worship Center on a simple interface that they can understand. But we're actually sending the command to the decoder to tell it to subscribe to a different source.
So are you using Crestron for that stuff, Extron? Or are you doing QSys? What are you guys integrating
We're mostly
with?
doing Symmetrics.
Oh, okay.
So we like their audio DSPs.
Mm-hmm.
Their audio fidelity is noticeably better than most of the others in the DSP space.
Yeah.
But they also have their own built-in control system. But they can play nice with other control systems. So if somebody already has a Crestron or some other type of control that's already there,
Yeah.
we can do it with any of that stuff. But we lean towards Symmetrics if there's not something existing.
Interesting. Well, here's a question that's just more like my own integration stuff, but I'm helping a church move their streaming gear into like a streaming office almost, or like a workspace outside of the sanctuary, because they're doing it in there, and it's not the sound, it's basically impossible to mix the sound for the stream because you're hearing the ambient sound even with closed back headphones.
Feel the pressure on your body even.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So we want to move them into their own space where at least the audio will be muted for the most part, and they can wear headphones in there and accurately level the show or the service. But the issue is that they run their audio out of a PreSonus board, and they're running it USB into the Mac for their auxiliary lines, basically. And now we're going to be moving it across the building. And I'm trying to figure out what's what makes the most sense to output on. It's a brand new sophisticated board, and get it across to that office. Do you have any solutions for that?
Yeah, a couple of different ideas you could do. If you are sophisticated enough to run AVB, then you
Mhm.
could, AVB is built on a Presonus, but you have to get a switch that's AVB capable.
Okay.
And then you should be able to figure out how to get AVB in on your computer at the other end on the
Okay.
network. The way that I prefer to do it is I'm kind of more of a Dante fan.
Yep.
So same type of a thing, but the Presonus makes a AVB to Dante bridge that gives you a 16 channel bidirectional interface.
Okay.
So you could basically send your bus, or buses,
Mhm.
over Dante, and then Dante virtual sound card or a Dante dongle adapter into the computer.
Okay, so let's take a peek at that because I want to. These are just solutions that I would be good to. An AVB to Dante bridge. You said, is that the correct language?
Yeah, I think so. Let's see. I actually have. I'm gonna see if I can pull this up real quick. I have a quote with that exact setup right now
Yeah.
that I'm working.
AVB D16 network bridge, 16 by 16 two-way.
Yeah. Yep. That's it. The
Presonus.
D16. Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it has on the back of it, which good luck finding that picture unless you go on Google.
Yeah. What's with that? Why won't it show the? Oh,
Yeah.
here is this it here?
Yeah, that's it. So it's
Okay,
got the
cool.
Ethercon connections. One of them is AVB, and then it's got primary and secondary Dante on it. But
Oh,
the only problem is if you're going to also be using your AVB snakes in that setup, that you're going to have to get one of their little AVB switches or some switch that's AVB compatible.
so does the Presonus output AVB native, and then you could put this on the other side? Like if you had a EtherCon running from your
Yeah, I think you should be able to because the snake's all daisy chain.
right.
Like if let's say you had two snakes, you should be able to go snake one, snake two, and then put this Dante bridge at the end. I believe. I've actually not done that in real life, but in theory that should be doable.
Okay. Just be curious. I just want to see the back of their board. There's like so many stinking outputs on the back of that thing,
Right.
and I don't
There's a
know.
network control output. There's a AVB digital network output, and then most of the rest is going to be analog I/O.
Right. All right. Here is a picture of the back of that board. Crap. Here it is. Oh, except that, well, it's a 32SC. Open this in a new tab. Sorry, just trying to find a decent picture to share. So this is kind of like the back of that board where we've got multiple.
And it's the
things here.
EtherCon connection that they're going to use for their digital audio because that's the one that all bets are off when that disconnects.
Interesting. Okay.
But here's something that not a lot of people know is if you already have an existing shielded line. First of all, anytime you're doing anything with digital media, I always recommend a shielded line end to end. Like it's not technically required for NDI, but I have like zero glitches on NDI when I'm using shielded end to end.
Zero glitches in regards to what, interference?
Yeah, just interference, packet loss, those kind of things.
Yeah.
And so we had a lot more of that when we were running, say, like regular Cat 6. Nowadays I specify Cat 6A shielded, like on everything, and I just don't compromise that.
Yeah.
And things just deploy so quickly and no glitches, no problems to solve.
Yeah. So the industry standard is still Cat 5e because it's dirt cheap, but
Right.
the idea is that because you can shield it and keep it away, like obviously proper install is game one, but the next piece is if you can't have that or you do have that, still shield it, and you're going to eliminate the rest of the interference issues that you normally see with AV installations over IP.
Yep. And so Presonus and like the Behringer and Midas, the M32, X32, a lot of these guys, they actually require a shielded line. They didn't used to. I was on an install with a Midas years ago, and the specification was just a Cat 5e line.
Right.
And I thought we're going to run a Cat 6 and be upgraded. We'll be uptown here. They were still having snap crackle pops, and I was following the manual printed out of the box.
Yeah.
And then you know, I talked with there was a different engineer on the project, and I was like, I think we need to run this shielded. No, it doesn't say that we need that. He's flipping through the book. And I went to the website and downloaded this exact same manual, and it had a new thing on there that says, warning, shielded line absolutely required.
Really?
So, yeah. So like they had a version of it that was printed that did not require shielding. And then they updated it in real time. So we had to pull the line out. And so what I tell clients is I say, you look, the cable's cheap compared to the time of the guys who put it in.
Right.
So spend a few extra pennies, put the good cable in. It's just worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. That's really interesting stuff.
But and those ether cons that are on there, you know, like a lot of times you've installed a line or you're installing a line yourself out of a big spool, 1,000-foot spool.
Right.
How do you get ethercon on it? Well, you can buy the ethercon connections, but if it's a pre-terminated line, Neutrik makes something that's called an ethercon carrier that is actually able to get put onto an existing jack after the fact, and it gives you the strength of ethercon over an existing RJ45. It's pretty cool.
So these are you're referencing the ethercon jacks that are on these things.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. So you can still technically customize them in the field, like make them custom runs. You don't have to buy prefab cables for this.
Right. Yeah. Like if I'm pulling a new cable, I have like the real ethercon connections that I can put on. But if it is a prefabbed cable and I want to put an ethercon on it, they make something called an ethercon carrier.
Right. Okay.
At the end, it looks just like an ethercon, but it has like the boot of it is like split, so you don't have to put the boot on before the line is terminated.
Yeah.
So it's got a split boot that you can put on, and it works really well.
That is cool. I need to check that out.
Yeah, I think it's called the Neutrik ethercon carrier.
Neutrik, this one. This one says ethercon connector carrier in nickel. Just looking for, they have one photo, so that's not super helpful. Anyway, okay, that's good to know. Yeah, that is the question. It's like we want to move that streaming service over to a different room, and we can run, like if we have the cables that day of install, you know, obviously we could run the ethercon cable over there, but it's just a matter of, do we have it, and what do we need, and will it natively go out of board that they already have, or will they need to buy something else, or what, you know? Like
Are they using Digital Snake with that?
No, well, they swapped out. Let me think what they did. They swapped out Yamaha O1Vs. They had a master. They had two boards basically. One is master, one is slave, and then they replaced it with this Persona. So all the hard lines, you know, were already there. They're all XLR runs basically, and they had 4 snakes that came back to their main booth. So they haven't changed any of that yet. It's all basically just hard lined in, which is fine. It's got its own problems, but it's you know, that's basically what they're up to.
Nice. Okay.
So if they were to rip it all out and redo it, then obviously, then we would just run basically Digital Snakes up to the board. But it's all hard lined installed into the sides of their stage, like on left and right. They have 16 ports, and then they just run cables onto the stage for whatever they need.
You know, another thing you could try is if you're only wanting to run like a left-right bus out of the matrix over to the stream, you could just get a Dante input adapter. It requires PoE to power it, but that's, you know, under $200, and you're sending, you know, 2 lines across the network. Then you don't have to get that, you know, AVB to Dante bridge. So it'd save quite a bit.
So this is say that one more time, Dante.
They call it an Avio Dante adapter. It's made by Audinate.
Okay, yeah.
And it's 2 channels in PoE. It's basically like 2 XLRs at one end and a RJ45 jack in the other.
Yeah.
And I use those things like candy and just kind of go through them everywhere.
So you would plug this in.
You'd take like let's say you use like output 7 and 8 to go out to your stream analog on your console. Then you'd basically take those 2 and plug dongle adapter out of the back of that console,
Right.
out of those 2 channels, and then that plugs into your network with PoE, and it turns it into Dante. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So it turns into Dante, and then
Mhm.
now your Ethernet across. But you got to convert it back on the other side, or you can just use
No,
Dante
so
Virtual Sound Card, or what are you using there?
yeah, Dante Virtual Sound Card in the computer that's doing your stream will be able to, that'll basically ingest your Dante audio. The Dante Virtual Sound Card is then recognized in your software like it's a USB audio card.
Right.
But the one you're looking at right there is the input adapter, which
Yeah.
will take, that would be the right one. So there's an input adapter and an output adapter, and there's a 1 channel, a 2 channel. They have an AES, AES version. They've got, all kinds of different versions. They got Bluetooth versions of these things.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, the Avio adapters. So there's like a bunch of different versions of the Avios that are pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. Why it needs to be $200, I'll never know. But
yeah, that thing used to be $140, and then pandemic hit.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's good to know. Because that is, I figured like, well, we could just convert this to Dante and then get it across the network that way. But it is the problem, like that, they're just running a USB, and that's good for like 30 feet or whatever it is. So that's going to be way too short for what they need.
right.
NetHab, our Netgear M42 switches AVB compatible. Are you running stuff in the Netgear 4250, or you're a Unify guy, right?
I use a lot of Unify because a lot of churches already have Unify, but
Yeah.
the M4250, from what I understand, I've used them on a couple projects, but I'm usually like using for Dante. I believe that they pretty much have a media preset for all of those. So you say I'm using it for NDI, using it for Dante, using it for
Yeah.
AVB, and it will set everything up in the back end.
So it says, on their website, it says enabling AVB using for main user interface. So looks like there's a configuration, but then there's also talks of like licenses, like purchasing a license to enable that.
Oh, okay.
AVB license for M4250. So yeah, it is possible somehow, but it looks like they want you to have a
Oof, that's a spendy
$700 license.
A lot of
Yeah.
You may as well just buy a straight up AVB switch for that.
Right. Yeah, it seems like that's maybe a little steep for what it is.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyways, AES 50 isn't a network protocol and uses the shield pin as part of the transformer design. We must have been talking about something that's lost on me.
That's Midas and
Oh, gotcha. Newer Cat 6A Ethercon end is so nice. You don't have to shove each wire down the tiny plastic end in the wrong order. Yeah, that's always fun. Well, that's interesting. I guess I'm going to be finding more about that, because I'm going to have to help them get this thing up and running.
There's the new Cat 6A pass-throughs where it kind of looks like a zigzag pattern of the holes at the end of the connector. They're pretty easy to shove the new Cat 6A stuff through.
Yeah.
So like we're pretty fast with those now.
Nice.
But Unify is an interesting topic, because if you look through a lot of people's forums, the kind of people who would be watching this show, there's lots of people out there who say you can't use Unify with Dante, it doesn't work with NDI. And I've got it installed all over the place using both.
So you're running Gen 2 for your NDI installs on Unify.
Yep.
So tell me about that, because yes, I have heard, I have been witness to multiple Gen 2 switches burning out. The Gen 1 seemed to be able to keep up, but when they switched to the software processing on Gen 2, it seemed to really, it's either like the packet buffers are always filling up and it's always kind of like frying the hardware. But, it's not to say that people aren't doing it successfully. It's just I haven't seen it done correctly, I guess. Like, what do you do in terms of like workload, for example, on a Unify switch? If you're running what do you typically buy? 8 porters, 16 porters, and how many?
Well, the Gen 2 Pro switches is what I'm specifying for these, because we're pushing so much bandwidth through with NDI, and I really want 10 gig uplinks.
Yep.
So that means that basically requires it's going to be the 24 port PoE Pro, and
Okay.
that's about a $799 for that switch. But it's a good solid switch.
Does that one have the SFP on it as well, or
Yeah,
just 24?
SFP
Okay.
plus. So it's got that'll have 2 SFP plus 10 gig links on it.
Yeah.
The and the 40 what is it, the 48 channel version of that will actually add 4 of those SFP plus ports.
Nice.
So we've got a couple of installations too where they've got so many pro switches going on in the facility. We want to stay with a star topology that we're using their aggregation switches.
Yep.
It'll have like 16 or more ports of 10 gig each.
Yeah.
And so we're running
This is
that.
an aggregation switch, right? This guy here.
Yeah, that's a 28 port. Yep, aggregation switch. And so that's they've got a 16 port flavor of that too, where it's a combination
Nice.
of RJ45 and SFP plus.
Yeah, let's pull this up here because Unify is something that we don't normally, I won't say the word recommend, but it's not something that we typically gravitate towards because they're not sitting in the AV space.
Right.
But I have used the Gen 1s of the Unify stuff, and they operate for small installs just fine. Like there's no real issue with it. So if you have experience with the Gen 2s, then yeah, how you're configuring those things and whatever, I'm very interested to hear, kind of what you do, what your go-to is, what your go-to switches and everything.
If it's like outside of, a single switch backplane, then I don't compromise. It's got to be the pro level switch.
Okay.
And of course PoE, because I want to power my devices off of the switch.
Right. So
like that one isn't PoE. It's pro and it's SFP plus, but not PoE. And I know that because the price.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, this is $400. So I'm missing something here.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I've done plenty of installs with like just their little, they've got a little 8-port 150 watt one for I think $200. And if I'm staying inside of one switch, that's a great little switch for this application.
Yep. Yeah, that's the 8-porter is the one that I've seen used in multiple situations because it still gives you, I think it's got 2 SFP ports on it. So it still gives you that gig over the, if you need to go back to your backplane over a gig, at least you have that, and you can throw 2 or 3 sources on it and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
When it gets a little bit bigger, if we start talking about 24 ports and we start talking about, this is just straight PoE, right? Or is it PoE plus?
This is going to have some plus and some regular PoE.
Yeah. Okay.
So
now, how do you find these integrating with SFP plus? How do you find them integrating with other brand switches? Have you done much of that?
Yeah. I usually like to try to stay with the same flavor. So if it's a Netgear house, then let's stay Netgear. But the reason we do so much with Unify is because like I show up on the scene, they've already got Unify.
Yeah.
And so we're, trying to honor what they like to use. And so we've kind of had to figure out and engineer, how can we make this happen? But, it's like, hey, if money's no object, I'm not buying Unify.
Sure.
But a lot of times the question is like, can we have the number of cameras we want? Not if we buy Cisco.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, and I'm looking at it from the perspective of the organization. What's this church or what's this client looking for that's going to actually mean something? It's going to be meaningful to the end users who experience the content. They don't care if it's a Cisco or a Unify or whatever. So if the Unify works, then we can make Unify work. So it's not my favorite. It's just what I encounter all the time.
Yeah, it's just what everyone's using, which is pretty. I would agree with that. Like there's still a lot of it out there, and if it was like, if you're picking now, if you're going shopping for switches, I wouldn't tell you to go to Unify. But if that's what your existing infrastructure is, well, then we definitely need to figure out, what works. I generally tell them to spread the workload out. So I would buy more switches and smaller switches, but more of them to increase your processing capability at that point. But again, if it's a money thing, or if you're limited to we can only buy one for this installation, then, at least I know there are guys that are using them.
Yeah.
Do you kind of have a threshold with how many NDI sources you put on a single switch like that?
Well, again, if all of my NDI stuff is contained inside of one switch,
Mhm.
I'm not too concerned about it because the if it has a non-blocking back plane inside the switch, then I know we're not gonna have a traffic problem internally.
Right.
So, and in that case, I don't care if it's Gen 1, Gen 2. I don't care if it's their little 8-port guy or the bigger 48 or 24, anywhere in between. I've had really good success with all of those,
Yeah.
and lots of NDI running through them. The choking point comes when you're saying now we're gonna send multiple streams in and out of one switch to go to another switch,
Mhm.
which is often the case in a infrastructure. And so that's where you're like, okay, we're stepping up to pro, we're going to 10 gig links or more.
Yep.
And, and that's kind of that determining factor. So I guess I've not really run into a practical limit inside of a switch. I run into a limit when I'm going switch to switch on my hops.
Right. Right. That's interesting.
And then we do a lot with NDI. Obviously, if you're using Wirecast, OBS, vMix, all of those have NDI capabilities. A lot of churches are using ProPresenter 7
Yep.
or some other type of presentation software. A lot of those, the ProPresenter 7 in particular, is NDI native now,
Yep.
and you can create lots of different outputs that are outputting via NDI, as well as you can send, say, an alpha key enabled clear background version of your text and graphics that's formatted completely differently to
Yep.
go to your live stream content. And so that enables it, but we're sending that over NDI. So instead of having to say, I have to have complicated, output boxes with lots of HDMI or SDI outputs, and then I have to have more capture cards and all these other kind of things, that NDI kind of has democratized that and made it really inexpensive over network.
Yeah. Well, do you find that you pay for it on the other side where it's like in the processing power? Like we had a couple of NDI outputs with ProPresenter, and we had a lower thirds, and then we were outputting a full screen basically, and it was working fine. But then we started noticing like ProPresenter itself was struggling to like go to the next slide. So we eliminated one of them, and then it worked totally fine. It might just be a resource level on the machine that it was running at. But I just thought like, wow, like it can do multiple NDI outputs, but it seems like any more than two, and it was a showstopper. And so I didn't know if
Definitely is a resource dependent question there because, and it doesn't matter Mac or PC necessarily. It's all still about system resource.
Yeah.
I will say, we've done a bunch of installations lately with the new M1 Macs, and those things are pretty unbelievable, all the stuff they can do.
Oh yeah.
I've got some M1s that are in installs that have been working flawlessly, that, basically like they're comparing to the old iMac Pro
Right.
that discontinued. That was a big Xeon server processor, and like the little M1 is keeping up with it. It's actually shocking.
Wow, that's impressive.
We're running 4 NDI outputs to different places off of one of those.
Yeah, I got to look into that more because I thought like we had purchased a Mac recently for ProPresenter because it was struggling, and yeah, then that was the one that we were trying to do some stuff on, and it wasn't working perfectly. But then again, I didn't commit a bunch of extra time to it either. It was kind of like in passing, and so I can't wait. NetHab says I can't wait for the new M2 Mac Mini. It's always something else down the line. Now you had Judson, you had sent me an email, and I want to just chat about it on the show here. You had talked about being able to split a source and send it to 2 different decoders, and show it up there, and then combine those 2 like screens. So if you were to do like a video wall or something like that. So currently we don't have any offerings that would do that inside the NDI protocol. So you would have to split it prior to that encode happening. But if those encodes that, like if you're splitting them into 2 different streams, then you would just need them to be, SMTP standard resolution. So 1080p, 2160, something like that a BirdDog could read, and then send it, split it prior to the NDI conversion, send those 2 streams over, and then match them again later on. So then one decoder on left and one on right, basically, and so forth. So currently, no. However, there has been a high ask for something like Video Wall, where you could say, I've got a 3x3 grid. I want this image to go to this 3x3 grid, and then you would correlate which decoders are in what position, and then send the signal to that group, and the group would then split it. So that conversation has been had. I know that. Not to say that there's anything brewing, because I don't know if they know how to do it. But it's definitely been like flagged as this is something that the AV world is going to want, because video walls are a thing. And then it will become, if you go to any trade show, NAB, anything like that, it's like every other booth has a video wall. And so that's coming. Like, the demand for that is there, as long as, in our realm, at least, churches or community groups or whatever are still buying that level of integration. But video walls go, like, when we were talking about it internally, I was like, well, how am I going to like support that? How are we going to test that? Because one guy's video wall is going to be a 2x2, and one guy's video wall is going to be like a 12x12. And I'm not too sure if I can reproduce that, like other than flying out and testing it. And so that was also part of the conversation. It's like, okay, how do we do that? How do we like pseudo do that? Because we would need then the ability to scale it up. And then what are the upper limits to that? How many, is it a 2x1 grid, or will it just do, 2x2s, or, like increments that are equal, or what? So
the conversation that I'm having with a client right now, it's for a boardroom in a school district, and they want to have 3 projectors side by side that can be any combination of one super wide image with all 3, or 3 separate images, or a combined image on the left 2 or the right 2. And so it's like, well, I'm aware of a bunch of kind of encoder decoder stuff in the JPEG 2000 or similar space that can do that kind of stuff. But like, I've had those manufacturers get in touch with me about different things. I'm like, man, your encoders and decoders are like $1,200 an endpoint.
Yikes.
And they take a really complicated network requirement, and I start telling them about NDI, and it gets their attention.
Yep.
Because they kind of realize that they better change with the times, or they're going to get left behind.
Well, or it'll just stay expensive. I mean,
you
can buy a lot more NDI equipment for that sort of money.
Yep.
Yeah, I know that ProPresenter can do it.
Yeah.
Can take a source and split it, and then, because they do that for multiple outputs all the time. I haven't played too much with that in ProPresenter, but I've seen it done, because I've been at conferences and whatever where they're setting up the screens and they're basically just mapping them inside ProPresenter and they're all different sizes. Like the last one that I was at, which was a couple of years ago now, probably 2018, it was down in Florida, and they had 2 screens that were kind of like oblong on the sides, and then they had one like strip that went across the middle of the stage from left to right, but it was a very strange output. And so the guy pulled up ProPresenter and he like mapped it to the edges of that screen, and they had 3 or 4 projectors that were covering all of these screens, and then 2 projectors on the side for those other 2 screens. And so then when he threw a graphic up there, all 3 projectors that were pointed in the middle basically, made the single image that was all a strange dimension or whatever. But it was just like super accessible, which I thought, this would be like a whole week-long setup if you were actually trying to create your graphics to adhere to a size like this. But ProPresenter seems to do it naturally, which is very handy.
Yep. It's an amazing program. And I had a guy who was contacting me about something for a company that is related to, I don't know, like they film fitness and stuff like that.
Yep.
So it's like, he knows me from the church world. And so he's like, do you have a program for this? And I said, ProPresenter will do everything you're looking for. He goes, this isn't a church thing. So it doesn't matter. So your experience with ProPresenter is probably 5% of what it can do.
Yeah. That's the truth with actually every church installation, is like they're barely scratching the surface with the potential of what ProPresenter can do. But it's also then like, well, if we make this more complicated, we've got to teach people how to use it. And so it's this like catch-22 where it's like, it can do it and we want to do it, but nobody knows how to do it. And we don't want to like have a whole training week worth of stuff. So the question was, ProPresenter can tile normal outputs. Can it tile across multiple NDI outputs?
I haven't played with that specifically, but I'm going to mess with it.
Yeah, that's That would be a very interesting find. NetHab says, I use all of my Unify for my primary networks, including Dante and NDI, and a 4250 for my secondary network. Wow, that's impressive.
That is good. Yeah.
That's it's a good way to do it. Okay, Webb had a question that I bypassed a little while ago. This is like 15 minutes ago. Sorry, man. A few weeks back, I was happy to report that we were happy with our BirdDog converters. Whoops. Unfortunately, I had to take our 4K SDI converter out of commission as it was producing a very noticeable pixelated image. We restarted it several times, changed the resolution from 4K to 1080 without getting any improvement at all. Same pixelated image. All the other converters, including the 4K HDMI model, are running fine. Network utilization is below 15%. We run our NDI network on SFP Plus linked to a 4250 switch. All right, so pixelation on the so this is a new symptom that has come up since we introduced the 4K family. I've heard of this pixelation problem where people are sending a signal and it looks fuzzy or pixelated or what have you, like it's not the clean image. First question is, you're running latest firmware, I'm assuming, and second would be the 4K HDMI. First of all, you say I change it from 4K, so 2160 down to 1080. You're changing the source to that, and I guess I should clarify, these are decoders, not encoders. So all of that will matter. I'm assuming you mean decoding because that would produce the image to look at. But then you're changing the source from 4K to 1080 and it's still remaining pixelated. So now we've isolated it to this particular product with this particular firmware. So I would double check that. I forgot to mention that the 4K SDI converters are running the latest available firmware. Okay, so circle gets the square. All right, so 192 running with pixelated images. Network utilization is under 15%. Image, the image itself is changed from 4K to 1080 and it's still remaining pixelated. Is the bandwidth bottled at all? Are you running a manual bandwidth or is it NDI managed? Probably NDI managed. It's encoding a video signal coming from a Blackmagic Studio camera 4K. Oh, so we're in encode. And we're encoding a Blackmagic Studio. Oh. Have you tested this Blackmagic Studio 4K camera on other BirdDog devices? Because so you say the HDMI seems to be fine or is working fine. But this camera, here's the thing. And I don't know, encoder is set to NDI managed bandwidth. Okay. Well, one test, I guess, is to change. This is not something I would normally recommend. Change that to manual and do that full value. It's like 240 or something like that. Just to see if the algorithm inside that device is not utilizing enough bandwidth for that. The other thing is replace the 4K SDI converter with a Studio NDI encoding 1080, of course, and it works beautifully. Yeah. So the NDI, the HDMI chip, I'm sorry, the silicone on the Studio are not the same parts as the 4K family. They're different manufacturers. Which is, there could be an issue here with the way that we're reading the EDID from the camera. You say it detects it fine, so like all the metadata is fine, but why it's not getting full value for the picture, that's a curious question. Encoder is set to NDI managed, and then yeah, this is encoding 1080. And then when you encode to 1080 on this 4K family, it remains pixelated. I'm assuming yes. That's an interesting one. It sounds perhaps like a firmware issue. It sounds like there's an issue with the way that it's being encoded. Now, you have You have, what did you say? 19192. Let me see if I have a beta that might address this, because we are working on betas for this family right now. Yes, I do. Okay, so not that I know of anything that would cause this, but would cause pixelation. I don't quite know. Let me look at the release notes real quick. All right, you're running 192. Is this progressive or interlaced? Did you say that already? I think it's progressive. Let me put this over here. Go back to StreamYard. Have you had much experience with StreamYard, Judson?
No, this is actually my first experience with StreamYard, but I saw you talking about it on Tuesday, and I've been kind of poking around. Looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it works pretty well. It's not as customizable as, your Wirecast or your vMix or whatever, but it gets the job done. And if I want to bring people in to chat just like this, it's super easy. I can even switch us around, and so it looks like I'm looking at you. But it's pretty simple, and you can even set it up to where the primary is larger and I'm smaller, or that I can present, and so I can have you here and talking through this stuff, or we can both be here. Yeah, it's bizarre, but there's lots of options, and it's pretty, I won't say basic, but it's for what you get for the annual license. It's pretty good. I like how easy it is to just send it to anybody and they can open it. I've had guys at trade shows. Ian was at a trade show and he just opened it on his phone. He's like, "Here, let me walk you around." He turned his camera around. He showed us all the booths and everything. While I don't have to do anything. I just have to send him a link. Did it take you to the website, or did it download anything, or what was that experience?
It just took me to the website. I have Safari as my default browser. So Safari said, "Hey, this is not a compatible browser," but
Really?
I opened it up in Brave browser.
Yeah.
Because Brave is a Chromium-based browser, but it doesn't have the potential drawbacks that Chrome has as far as privacy concerns.
Interesting.
So everything that says it needs Chrome, I use Brave.
Yeah. I hear my computer spinning up for some reason, and I can see my videos definitely slowing down. I'm not too sure what it is that I'm doing that's causing that. Let's kill some of these task-heavy programs, I guess, and see if she'll settle down.
Could that pixelation that WebNetZikos has, could pixelation be a byproduct of packet loss? Could packet loss be reducing the bandwidth and it's just trying to piece together what it can?
Yeah, not typically, because if you have packet loss, in progressive, we're encoding the whole frame and shipping it out. And so if you have packet loss, you're going to get stuttering, or it's going to freeze, or until it pieces it together. The loss in detail seems to be an encoding error. It seems to be a problem with the way that the SDI. Now it could be just a firmware thing. This is just speaking off the cuff, but it could be a firmware thing where the way that it's encoding on that particular device is having issues. Could also be if he swaps it out for a different one, then it could also be physical damage, where perhaps there are the soldered pins or something that are not working correctly, and so we're getting a partial image. But yeah, it's hard because if it's receiving the image but it's showing up as poor quality, that's not really that's not really a network error. It's almost as if it's listening to the proxy stream instead of the full value, right? Because for those of you who are keeping score at home, NDI outputs the full value picture, but then it outputs the proxy image, and then it outputs the comms channel, and then it outputs the metadata, which includes tally and audio and a bunch of other things. And there's also on the horizon the ability to separate the audio channel into its own NDI channel. And so the device is outputting video, but it's actually outputting like 4 or 5 things through that network card. So it's almost as if it's watching the low quality proxy stream, which if that's the case, then it may just be a matter of that. You know, I'd be curious, Webb. So if you pull open Studio Monitor and make sure that you're looking at, the non-low bandwidth version of the video, does it look pixelated on your computer? And if it does, and you switch it to low bandwidth, does it look better or worse? Hopefully it'll look worse, but if it's better, then it just means that we've swapped the tags on which is proxy and which isn't for that particular device. I do have a beta, which I'm happy for you to try. If you'd email us at the help desk, help@birddog.tv, and just so that everybody's on the same page, here we go. If you'd email us at help, then we'll say, hey, John said to email you guys for the beta for the 4K SDI. It is 198 is the one that I currently have. And we can have you give that a try and see if that would work at all. Would Dino show if it's getting proxy quality stream or full? No. Dino, the little preview window in the bottom right-hand corner of Dino is proxy. And it's literally just so that you can verify you have the right stream. But it doesn't actually pull in the full value until you start hitting test. And then it pulls all the packets down and does a sweep of if everything's arriving. Dino is literally a visualization of NDI analysis. So if you know how to read NDI analysis, it's actually less taxing on your system to run NDI analysis. But if you don't know what you're looking at there, then Dino is the graphical version of that. Just be sure that you run it on a machine that you trust when it comes to network interfaces. And in particular, don't use USB dongles. Mostly because those are a dime a dozen, but their speed and quality can vary. And so unless you've done rigorous testing on yours and you can trust it up to a gig, find a computer that has an onboard NIC card that's, mostly for the most part will be uncompromised, because they have to guarantee certain levels of data pass through there. But if you get one on like a USB dongle on Amazon, all bets are off as to what it can actually do at long periods of time. Remember, the test runs at least a minute. So you have to be able to send 140 megs over the period of a minute, 140 megs per second over the course of a whole minute. And it's going to have to be able to keep up with that without putting anything in storage. And if it can't, then you're going to see drop frames, but it's going to be a false indicator because it's not the camera that's dropping it. It's the computer can't process it through that little USB dongle. So there's lots of catches there. And the best way to round it is find a computer that has an onboard NIC. A lot of laptops don't have that now, which is really frustrating, but a lot of laptops don't have that. So what if Dino says it's getting 6,000 millisecond frames from a P200 over NDI bridge? Well, Judson might know something more about this. NDI bridge, I haven't played with it enough to know what sort of latency we're talking about. From what I gather, there is a fair bit of latency over bridge. Mostly because it's the paid for SDK that they developed it with, but it's not the workhorse that BirdDog Cloud is. Like Cloud has its I won't say guarantees, but the goal is to keep it as low as possible. Bridge is like a free product that they're like, here, now you can do that, but there's no guarantees on how fast it's going to be. So if you're getting really long delays on the frames, I suspect it's, maybe that's
a 6 second delay, isn't it?
Yeah.
6,000 millisecond.
Yeah. That's almost HX levels.
Right.
I'm just kidding. Some people love HX. It's all good. And for a lot of applications, like in a studio, HX would be fine. I'd have to line up the audio a little better, but it would be fine. It's not the end of the world. But if you have the Ferrari, you might as well drive it.
There you go.
I will certainly try switching to low bandwidth on Studio Monitor report back. Yeah, I'm just curious if it gets worse. Like if it's bad quality in Studio Monitor and then it gets worse, then we're looking at it correct. I would definitely though email the help desk and get the beta and try that, because it may be just something that needed to be corrected in 192. It wasn't caught because when they produce the SDI and the HDMI firmwares, they usually launch those together. So it may just be a QA thing. Man, that was a lot of talking for me. Well, anything else going on in your world, Judson, that we should? I really appreciate you jumping on here for the show. I know it's super early over there, so
I tell you, we just did our first install with the BirdDog wall plate, the decoders.
Yeah, and
they're working really great. What's kind of surprised us was that even across a unified network, the and in 2 hops, it's basically going from a pro switch to an aggregation switch to a pro switch to the decoder. That the BirdDog was in time, or maybe even a fraction ahead of the projector in the room that's just running through one of those regular old HDMI over Ethernet systems.
Really?
Yeah, I've got a little clip if you want to see it.
Yeah, sure.
So let me hit play on this thing.
Yeah, hang on. Let me blow this up so we can all kind of watch this.
So the TV on the right is the wall plate, and the projector is running like a HDMI over Ethernet.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
So that's running, like I said, a unified pro switch to an aggregation switch to a pro switch. And it's arriving faster. I'd read an article a while ago, and it was a guy who was running some kind of a Netgear switch or something like that. And he was saying that he had his BirdDog encoder decoder setup arriving faster than just SDI through a Blackmagic switch.
Yeah.
So I thought that was fascinating.
Curious. I mean, the Ethernet, like that Ethernet to Ethernet unit, that is that doesn't shock me too much, but the straight up SDI stuff, that surprises me.
That surprised me too. But yeah, he said it was inside the same switch and all that kind of stuff. And I've now been trying to find that because I wanted to find out who that was.
Yeah.
But I can't find the post anymore. It was a post probably on one of the BirdDog forums on Facebook.
Interesting. Yeah, that's really good to know. I mean, I'm thrilled that it's faster, that you have to run synchronization on it just to get it to line up. But
that TV being faster than the projector, that TV wasn't even on game mode, which would make it even faster.
Right.
So that was still on kind of the slow, high quality mode.
Yeah. Yeah. You did a hard install then with like you did like a new work box on there or an old work box on there, and
yep. Yeah. Did a mud ring. Yep. And we ran, the good solid shielded, Cat 6A or Cat 7, whatever.
Yeah.
All the way end to end. So,
and that goes, you said that went into a unified 24 port and then back to an aggregate and then back to the,
yep.
Man, that's so cool. That's the exact design that I used at NAB.
Mm-hmm.
So the guys were like, hey, we need network. Here are our requirements, which of course evolved over like 3 months of talking with them, where it was like, we want two NDI units at each table. We're going to have like 8 tables, whatever. I was like, okay, no problem. And then that turned into like, we want a keyboard and 2 cameras showing on a flex that's on an NEC TV. And then it kept snowballing. So I did that design where I had a main aggregate switch back at the main box with all the pretty lights and everything. And the network rack that I used is now in my office because I'm that nerdy guy. But I had like a nice glass door on it and everything, and I had the pretty lights going on. And then, but at the end of the day, every switch had, well, it was supposed to have 2 10 gig, trunks back to that aggregate switch. So it was only ever just 1 hop or 2 hops technically. But if we ever needed to go from one switch to another, it was only ever going through the aggregate and then out to the other one.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that through some basic testing I was doing, I found that to be way better than trying to do redundancy where we go, from aggregate to switch, from switch to switch, from switch back to aggregate, and doing like a redundancy circle. If one of my desks got cut, I could have used one of my spare fibers and just rerun it. So I wasn't worried about that long term because we were only going to be there for a week.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, yeah, that everything to the brain basically. And then I set up the aggregate. These are 4250s. Then I set up that aggregate to run all the DHCPs for all the VLANs that I was going to have. I had half a dozen at the end of the show. But it was the brains for everything and just kept things nice and tidy. And then all you have to do is on each of the switches, then you fire them up, you light up the ports that you want on certain VLANs, and the aggregate switch, the actual fiber core, would do all of the DHCP work, but you didn't have to customize it on every single switch. All you had to do is say, on this switch, I want 1 through 8 to be on VLAN 10 and the other ones to be on VLAN 20. And then the aggregate, when it saw it join, would then start issuing IP addresses. It was beautiful.
That's nice. That's a good way to do it.
Because then with management, I was thinking long term, and this was like a great little test environment. Of course, I had to take it all apart, but management would be then you just have to log into the core switch, which is the primary. It's the usually you set that up on the IP address that you're going to remember. It was the primary IP, and you log in and you can see the tables and you can see all the customization for every VLAN and how, what the range is supposed to be and all that. And on top of all of that, then I added 2 routers to bring in 2 sources of internet for 2 of the VLANs. And so I was able to have, it was so stupid because, and here's a little known fact that probably nobody knows. They set up our booth backwards. So they put it all the walls up, but then they put all of the devices in the opposite ends. And so the drops were in the wrong spot. Well, because I did the aggregate, I was able to bring in the internet from the wrong location where they dropped it, brought it into a router, which translated over to the proper VLAN, send that back to the aggregate and get it to the right place. It didn't really matter where they dropped it. So they were like, we want it to be convenient, but instead they installed everything backwards. And so I was like, well, it's still set up correctly to where the trunk will handle the correct network data, and they're NAB internet speed, so it's not going to be great. But we were still able to route it fairly simply. And that mistake, which would have been brutal if I had the VLANs all isolated to their cabinets around the network, I would have been taking switches and like physically moving them across. But instead, it was literally just add this to the trunk, add 1 VLAN port for that router, and boom, now I have internet for that VLAN because it's literally just lighting up 1 port on the switch. So yeah, it was pretty, I was super proud of myself the whole time. Nobody knew why I was happy about it, but I knew. And as a networking guy, felt pretty good. So
the little things that make us feel good, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, it's like super slick, but no one else will appreciate it. But yeah, this is a great way to do this. So it's exactly how the way that you're describing that church. It's exactly. And Bugsy says, hey, I know that church.
Yeah,
hey,
he helped some work there.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's like your right hand man, right? So, anytime, Webb. Go ahead.
Yeah, there was another place, another church that had it where like they have their big video walls inside the main sanctuary. Then they have TVs out in the foyer.
Yeah,
and the foyers run off of Bird Dog Studios, and they were arriving late. So part of the way that we solved that was like they had their system running all 24p, and so Bird Dog respects 24p. Yep. This is what I try to tell people to remember: is what's the published latency on a Bird Dog device? It's 1 frame. So a 1 second divided by 24 is a much larger latency than 1 second divided by 60.
Correct.
So we switched everything over to 60p, and the latency basically went away.
That's really interesting to hear.
So I've got a little clip of that if you want to see it.
Yeah. Always.
So this is after we solved it. You can see their wireless camera moving around inside the sanctuary, and we pretty much fixed it. And then it got a little better after this, because then after this clip was shot, then we went and put game mode on the TVs, and then it was dead on.
Why were they wanting to run in 24? I mean, I know that's the cinematic.
That's kind of just what people do, I guess. This is a Bird Dog on the back of a TV.
Yeah, it's a mini.
That's how we do things.
Back there. That's cool.
These are TVs there in a cry room. That's a window into the sanctuary, and then
oh my gosh,
on Bird Dog.
This is one of the nicest cry rooms I've ever seen.
So, and then this is our Symmetrix control system, turning TVs off and on, and we can change sources and do all kinds of stuff.
Wow, dude, That's so stinking cool. Is it all IR controlled, or what are you doing there to control the TVs?
It depends. See, I'm trying to remember what this one was. This one I think is serial. Yeah, I think this one's serial. So we can do serial, we can do infrared. Depends on.
But how do you plug the serial into the like TVs have serial on them, or are you using some sort of converter?
Commercial styled TVs do.
Oh, okay.
These are 86-inch commercial displays. They're rated for 16 hours.
Wait, they're each 86 inches?
Yeah.
Good night. Oh my goodness. What do those run? Just roughly.
The commercial flavors are like $4,000. The
Yikes.
residential versions just over $2,000.
Yeah.
And they're the same panel inside, but it's just like you get different connectivity and you get a different rating, and I think a better power supply, and
right.
different components. This is a projector at a church running off of BirdDog.
Really?
Yep, that's the same church.
Oh,
it's the same church. That's one of the racks that's running all that stuff with Unify.
Ooh, it's so pretty. Nice and clean, man. I mean, it's one thing to have like an intricate network all set up and like whatever, but it's another thing to have a network set up where you can show it to people and they're not like, good, like,
yep.
This looks terrible. So have it nice and clean like that. That's awesome.
As our branding panel in a rack, LEA professional amplifier, Symmetrix DSP, and BirdDog for video. And we kind of posted, that's my mind map. That's how I think of everything.
Yeah. So you draw that out in Visio, or what do you use for that?
There's like a mind mapping tool. What's it called? I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's like an iPad app actually, but
oh really?
Yeah. So like, it lets me put all of these little, kind of nodes or whatever and label it. And what I like is that I actually draw all of my wired connections and label every wired connection. So I can label it like, this is going to be this kind of wire, this gauge, this type of whatever.
Yeah.
But I like this process because it's non-linear. So like, whereas if I was doing a spreadsheet or something, I lose my creativity.
Yep. Yeah. And you can see like, okay, so I'm going from this product and there are 2 connections that need to go from here and here.
Yep. And this is a church in Woodinville, Washington. It's using all BirdDog on their Canon C cameras. I forget which ones they are.
Hey, there's an interesting question. So we've had a few tickets come in about Canon cameras not playing nicely on flexes.
Oh, really?
Have you run into anything like that where they'll plug in other cameras and they'll work, but the Canons, there's like a Canon HX. Yeah, not C100s. But those are nice cameras. They're actually not like. Are they still being manufactured or not?
I think so. Yeah.
C100s. Because it's just the body, right? I think. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a really. Oh, that's good to know. Okay. Well, anyways.
Like with this, I show this shot because like when our control system, when we're telling a decoder to do, like we're actually sending the command to say, hey, tune into this iMac that has its Wirecast output.
Right.
We're actually like, telling it that hard code.
You're using Central on that?
So this is BirdDog Central just to kind of like I'll use it more for what's the name of that device,
Right.
And then I look at it here and then I get my parameters I need to put my code into the control system. But I always make sure, hey, you can't change the name of your computer because I'm using your name.
Right. Yeah, before you make any changes, let us know.
Yep. It was a press release with a local tribe. And if you look behind all the TV cameras there's a BirdDog camera.
Oh, nice.
That we installed. And then also up next to this display here, there's a BirdDog camera. And
what is that? A
P100.
P100. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and that's the controller for it. So this was a press release. So we did this installation here because they kind of kept having to hire us in to produce these types of events.
Right.
So it's like, well, now we installed it. We can still come in and produce it, or you can produce it.
Yeah.
But
that's cool, man.
This is called a converter shell. It's a type of Ethercon. Have you seen those?
No.
If you sometimes need Ethercon and sometimes don't, Elite Core makes these.
Okay.
And you can basically take, if you kind of look just this side of this red rubber ring, you can pop that outer shell off and plug it into a regular switch.
Oh, nice.
And then you can pop that ring back on and plug it into an Ethercon connector, and then it's really good. So they're called the Converta Ethercon. Oh wait, what did I just say it was? I don't remember.
Converta Ethercon?
Converta shell or something.
Yeah.
But anyways, Elite Core has those. And these are kind of some control screens that we designed for people.
Throw that up there too. Wow, that's really cool. Do you have fallbacks set for your wall plates when you're done with an install? Do you tell it to go to like a logo, or like a
well, we'll usually like save in the like the church logo or the organization logo. So like, if it doesn't show the bird dog display per se. This is one of the touch screens of some audio control, but then this is interesting because we're in the sanctuary and we added this control for fellowship hall control. So it's at the other end of the campus, and we're able to change their video source. So if the sound guy is saying, hey, something's not right over there, he doesn't have to leave his position to go fix it. He can reach out and touch right here.
Oh, that's cool.
So cross campus for control.
Like you guys have custom written this program pretty much, like all of the functions and features.
Stuff, yep. Yeah, like there's different audio zones in the sanctuary install that we just did there. We can go. I actually have this one with an analog fallback.
Yeah.
If Dante failed, they can switch over to analog. Doesn't sound as good, but it still works.
Sure. Yeah.
And then, but yeah, over here we're controlling a different room at the other end of campus.
Gotcha. That's cool. Wow.
But yeah.
Yeah, I love seeing the stuff actually like installed and functional,
Mm-hmm.
because we don't get to see a lot of the actual stuff up and running. We normally only get to see the problems, so it's fun to see it.
These are 86-inch TVs also.
Wow. Are they running 4K through the NDI system, or are they running 1080, or what are they doing?
The wall plates are 1080. So, but the screens do a really great job of upscaling.
Yeah.
So I typically use LG is kind of my go-to brand to do for installation. So I don't usually like the I feel like their color is more accurate.
Yeah.
And really consistent quality control. A lot of the Samsungs have the curved back, and you have to like get weird size screws that don't come in the kit for whatever amount you're using, and just all that.
Been there. I'm a Samsung guy, so it's like every TV. I'm like, I gotta order this TV, and you get it home, and you're like, oh sweet, and then you realize, oh yeah, 5 years ago I had to order screws from Amazon to get the right ones, and they send you like 60 screws, and you need 4 of them.
Yeah.
So you're like, well, I'm not going to buy another TV for another few years, so I don't need to have these kicking around.
Right. But then I'm using BirdDog in this setup that you're looking through right now. I've got a Sony A6600.
Yeah.
Running through a BirdDog studio.
Oh, nice.
So
cool. Yeah.
I love the studio. Long live the studio.
May she rest in peace, and not pieces.
That's right.
What are you using for the camera control?
I've got a Ronin SC.
Yeah.
So
does it do live? It does
and
live
then
tracking.
I actually have my iPhone up here, and it's like live tracking me. So
yeah, I noticed it moving. So that's pretty cool that it can handle that.
So the image you're looking at right now is through my iPad. It's a little laggy for something, because it's an iPad.
Sure. Yeah, wireless.
Yeah.
Interesting. Awesome. Well, thanks, man. I mean, I've kept you an extra half an hour then beyond the show, but it's been cool to see all what you guys are up to. I love that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Next is we have to have you and Bug Zeke on the show and just let you guys go for an hour and see what comes up.
Yeah.
NetHab also mentioned, I'm looking forward to Netgear's version of the Unify controller for their AV switches, which was announced.
Really,
at
those sounds?
NAB. Hmm.
Let's do it. Let's get there. So this is actually a problem and why Unify is popular for two reasons. Is number one, it's cheap. But
Yep,
number two is they have that single pane of glass that really is a single pane of glass. And I've
correct.
been asking every switch manufacturer, like, please give us everything soup to nuts the way Unify does, so I never have to look at Unify again.
Yep.
But
Well, and
like
that is
everybody
the
says, I
primary
don't have it.
reason.
Like, well, I control switches and access points, but what about your firewall? Well, that's a separate thing. Well, I don't want it to be a separate thing.
Right. Yes. It's the reason why so many churches and offices and whatever are running the Unify stuff. It's
Mhm.
because it's all there on a single pane, and you don't even have to speak networking to kind of get it up and running. Like, it's where a
Right.
lot of guys cut their teeth and then they realize, oh, but if I am willing to learn a little bit, then there's a lot more depth in terms of control and all that. So, like, with the Netgear 4250 line being in the AV realm that it is, I think they've realized that not all AV guys are network administrators.
Right.
And so they have to make that product way more accessible. And they did that with the UI that's currently on the 4250. But if it could be a single pane of glass for all the network infrastructure and you can customize all of the things there,
Mhm.
oh my goodness. Yeah. Like, yeah. it's going to be a huge deal. And they're experiencing the same thing that BirdDog did 5 years ago when we created our own hardware for NDI, and nobody did that for like 4 years.
Right.
And same thing here. This AV division of the switch has gone full in on not just NDI, but Dante and a bunch of other protocols. And then no one else has. Like, Cisco has yet to turn its head towards AV at all, which
Yeah, they don't
blows
care.
my mind because yes, big data is where they make their money, and like they sell tens of thousands of switches to the federal government every year and yada yada yada. But it's like it's another potential market for Cisco to just, like, if they put very few resources behind it, they probably make all sorts of money because there are diehard Cisco guys in the world
There are.
who like will not give it up. But Cisco doesn't pay any attention to the AV market, and so Netgear, who also traditionally in the data world is not a big player, all of a sudden is way out in front with the AV line. And you have Broadfield, you have video guys, you have BirdDog, you have guys like yourself who are like, yeah, if you're starting with a new network, there's this line of switches that already natively understands the NDI requirements, and it takes very little customization to get it off the ground. And let's just go down that road. And then if they're going to come out with a single pane of glass that's going to make it accessible for everybody, well, now it's even more of a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. I like Unify. I started with Unify long ago. I like it for that single pane. However, their adoption process still needs some work.
It does.
In particular, the gateways. The gateways are so brutal to get on your. Once it's on, and you
Yep.
don't mess with it again. But like, yeah, integrate like the adoption process for switches and the gateways, especially when you're on the inside trying to adopt the gateway that is interacting with the outside. That's really my
Yep.
problem. But anyways,
Doing the Dream Machine Pro, where it's all
yeah.
in one box, makes that process a lot faster and more streamlined.
And that's a product I haven't had any experience with. So
Yeah.
that might be the next thing I've got to go down. I
And there's
have,
379, so you go with what you're
oh,
getting. You're getting a router and a firewall and a system controller, and you can pop a hard drive in and run security cameras for
does it
379.
give you the cloud option? Like, I have a
Yeah.
cloud key, all
Yep.
that. So it's all in there.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the gateway and the cloud key and a security camera controller and a VoIP controller and door access controller all in one appliance for 379. It's like that's why it's so hard to beat, you know?
Are they still doing the door, like the protect stuff? I thought they canned that division.
No, they're doing Protect. And
Are
then
they?
yeah, and
Oh,
we've installed some of the door access
yeah.
setups that are
How has
pretty
that been?
that's been pretty cool. Because you can give people, of course, the little like the NFC key card things.
Yep.
Also, if you integrate it with their thing called UID, which is
Mhm.
like an identification service they run, it uses authentication of the user's mobile device to authenticate them to open a door.
Nice.
So, like, it uses like their fingerprint to their face or whatever to say,
Yeah.
"Oh, now you're authenticated," and unlocks the door to the venue.
Huh.
So it's
Yeah,
actually
that's
pretty
cool.
cool. And when you use that, what's nice about it is that, if you fully deploy this the right way to your staff,
Right.
You don't have to say, here's the Wi-Fi password. You can basically you deploy it to the app on their mobile device. And then if that person's gone, you basically just revoke their access and they don't have access to your network anymore without having to change your passwords.
Interesting. It seems like they're rewriting the way that, like that's not typically how you do it, but it's because like you would authenticate with your credentials, right? You do a single sign-on method where you would like we do that with Microsoft 365, where it integrates with a lot of our services that we use internally. And so you can do single sign-on methods for new services. And so you go to the website to log into the CRM, but you put in your Microsoft credentials and it gives you access to the things that you've been authorized for. But in this regard, it's the same idea, but it's yeah, it's all centralized control.
Right.
And I kind of like it.
NetHab asked a question about the Dream Machine, or made a comment.
The only thing of Dream Machine Line doesn't do is multiple sites like campuses, multiple office locations, and automatic site-to-site VPNs.
So, and actually, it's not necessarily straightforward, but it does do those things. So I've got a client with 3 sites that's all run off of one controller.
Yeah.
So it's, it takes a little doing, but it's not that complicated.
So it is possible to do that.
Totally possible.
Interesting.
So it's actually my neighbor who lives behind my house. He has a shop right behind my house.
Mm-hmm.
He has another shop in the next town over, and then also his own personal residence that's nearby too.
Yeah.
And so they've got three locations on that one controller. And if you put a Unify camera on any of those locations, it pops up on the single Unify setup in their security camera setup.
On the Protect setup or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
I did a Protect install for a guy for like a warehouse so that he could just look at them on his phone and could give access to employees and whatever as he saw fit. But they were just basically redoing this. So I ran cable and I set it all up, and I had him on a gateway, I think. I forget what I put him on anyways, but it worked pretty well. Like once I had everything up and running again, I spent time adopting things and getting switches to talk. And these were Gen 2s. He wasn't doing NDI, but he was doing video and Protect and whatever. And once I got the network stable, then adding the cameras was pretty straightforward. And then we swapped out the hard drive in the little, it was like that little box. I forget what it's called.
It's the Cloud Key Gen 2 has the hard drive in it.
Yes. And so I was using that, but we swapped out the hard drive because it came with like a 32 gig hard drive or something.
Oh, really?
And so I went to like a terabyte or whatever it was, and money wasn't really a problem for this guy. So he was just like, I just want something like lots of backlog of video in case I need to go back and be like, oh, something happened last week. Well, he had a dozen cameras. And so a dozen cameras recording at 720, basically, for if he wants a week long backup, then yeah, you're going to need something pretty heavy. So it was that or a 2 terabyte. And he was just like, we'll go 1. And if I need a better one, I'll swap it out for a 2. So
yeah,
that's where he ended up. But I had a good experience with Protect. And I thought if I was needing to do an IP based camera system, it's definitely a great option still.
Yep. I mean, my here at my home office, I've got a Dream Machine Pro, and I'm running Protect cameras, and a couple of switches. And this is kind of also my lab where I do all of my builds before I go out to site too.
Yep.
But a lot of people say you can't run Dante on them, or they say NDI doesn't work reliably. The main thing that I do with Dante to make it very reliable is I do run it on its own VLAN. And I'll sometimes run Dante and NDI together on their own VLAN, but it's just separate from the rest of the network traffic.
Right.
But
yeah, I've always, I mean, that's like gospel for me. I'm always pleased. The best case scenario is separate hardware and separate wires and everything. But if you have to run it all on the same network, then at least VLAN it so that the tags won't be read by each other. Basically, I haven't heard Unify running Dante and NDI together, but if you say that it can be done, then I fully believe it because you make a living doing it. So, so that's good to know. But yeah, that's usually where I go right away is at least VLAN, preferably keep it on its own infrastructure altogether and control it further up the chain if you need it to all be on the same side. But
Yep.
Yeah,
I
usually.
helped with a casino that the casino wanted to put Unify in as their
Yeah.
setup. It's a separate network from all of the rest of the casino traffic.
Right.
But it was like for this install, they wanted to run Unify. So we ran it, and then we were using some other brand of encoders and decoders that I'm not going to say who, but it starts with an A and ends with an Atlona. But and they, they basically like, you can't use Unify, you can't use Unify. And it's like, well, we got stuff running on Unify within a single switch,
Right.
but it really, because it's all multicast stuff and it's looking for what's your IGMP querier.
Mm-hmm.
It's all technically, theoretically on paper possible, but their devices would basically have like a couple of frozen frames when every time you hit switch.
Yep.
And so, and again, it's like, that's the kind of the way that the Unify and that product are working together. So then they wanted their install to go well, so they gave the project a couple of M4250s, which is a sweet thing for them to do.
Yep.
But it threw a real wrench in the works, because now we're trying to get VLANs to communicate across different brands of switches,
Right.
between Unify and Netgear. And that turned out to be chaos. So the guy who was running that project, he bought more M4250 switches, and he switched all of the video equipment over to those.
Oh, wow.
And then just used Unify for the control side.
Yeah.
But that was a heck of a hassle.
Yeah, no kidding.
So that's why
Right.
I generally don't. NetHab's right. IGMP query and Unify is possible. It requires command line. And the problem with it is that if you boot your switch, you power cycle your switch, then most of your command line modification goes away. So you
Yep.
have to go back in and either have a string to basically push it every time you power cycle, or there's silent option C, which is if you can get into the actual code base. I forget what they call it, the JavaScript version. I forget what it is. Anyways, but you can kind of hard script that into the switch, into its boot. But that's kind of like ninja status if you're doing that stuff.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that ninja.
Well, again, you're also trying to install this to where you're not going to have to get called out again to fix something that just because the power went off,
Right.
And so there's that long-term sustainability thing that, eventually the cost to support it will outweigh the cost of any sort of profits that you made from the install. So
yeah,
it's just a business.
We had an
business
install
decision.
in the foothills, the foothills of the Cascade Mountains were near here, and they get power outages all the time. They, so it's like they're always saying, "Oh, the bird dog isn't working." That's what people could say. And so like I've got a joke with my friends. I'm like, it's never bird dog. Like
I'm glad that's the joke.
it is. I mean, it's like, I think I've maybe had one P200 get replaced, and
Yeah.
maybe one encoder.
Mhm.
But I've installed a lot of product, so
Yes.
it's like, it's a pretty good batting average. But it's never bird dog. So I'm like, it could be network, it could be computers, it could be something else in the signal chain. I've seen bad cables, I've seen all kinds of things. It's but the joke is it's never bird dog. And in their case, it was power failures.
Right.
And I was preaching the gospel about we need to get UPSs on everything, on your whole network.
Mm-hmm.
And once they did, pretty much all the problems went away. And like I had a call from them a week or two ago, and they had an extended power failure where all the UPSs ended up running out of juice.
Yep.
And in that case, it's just the network didn't get a good clean shut off and a good clean boot up. So it's
Right.
mostly reboot all your switches, everything works. It's never bird dog.
Yeah, I was going to say, and UPSs can even be programmed to shut things down, but that's another level of, again, sophistication, which you're probably not looking at.
Ninja.
Yeah, exactly. We're waiting on BirdDog Dante update before we, because they run Dante and NDI on the same VLAN, but they're waiting on the BirdDog Dante update to separate them. So yeah, we're all waiting on that update. Not sure when that'll be, but we know that fun that fun at church. It's true. It's not the bird dog. Again, I'm really thrilled that that's the way that you guys view it, because
Bugsy, his church runs all NDI stuff.
Yeah.
And so we've done a lot of work to help their church, and they run Dante and they run Unify. So, he's like a case study in all of this stuff.
Yep.
They have had some challenges early on, but it turns out, oh, it's your computer, it's your network, it's your cable, it's your whatever. It's never been BirdDog, never once.
Yep.
So
That's awesome.
and am I right about that, Zach? He'll say it's true.
Good stuff. All right. Now I have to go to a different meeting, so I'm going to have to shut this down. But it's been awesome, man. Thanks for jumping on with me. I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, anything you guys need, reach out. And of course, I'll be reaching out when I need stuff too.
Yeah, if you need something, reach out. If anybody else needs to reach out, the way that you do that is by hitting us up at help@birddog.tv. And yeah, we'd be happy to give you a hand. Maybe just give yourself a plug there, Judson. You are out in Washington, but you work in areas around there, and now you're doing some remote work. Yep. They can find you at QuincyOwen.com.
QuincyOwen.com, right.
And he's doing integration stuff with NDI, a lot of BirdDog gear. He runs Unify, which is not what everyone else does. And he knows Bugzeek, who is also on this show fairly regularly. And so we, first of all, thank you. But second of all, if anybody's looking for advice or things that are outside the BirdDog realm that I can't necessarily speak to, but you're talking about integration or you're looking for somebody to do an install, need to check out Judson and his team.
Yeah,
out there on the west side of the country.
I'm working with Symmetrics. They're that DSP manufacturer I like. They're actually local to me,
nice.
About 25 minutes down the freeway. And their guys are actually working with BirdDog, and they're working with your API to create, basically drag and drop integration to control BirdDog devices, which is super cool.
Awesome.
So the stuff that we've been kind of hard coding, they're making it so it's going to be simple to do.
A lot more effective, and that'll speed up installs and hopefully make it more reliable and all that good stuff too. So
yeah, because we're doing one at this tribal center that's going to have it where I'm creating a mobile app that their staff will be able to use so that they can do virtual tours to talk about their tribal history. And
cool.
They'll have like basically a forward next button on their phone to be able to pan the PTZ cameras to look at the thing that they're talking about.
Oh, that's cool. I like that. Awesome. All right. Well, appreciate it, man. I'm going to have you back on sometime soon. So we'll be in touch and we'll follow up with you and see how things are going. Thanks for all the sneak peeks with all of your installs. I like all that. That's great. But it's been good to finally get on a show with you for a little bit and let people know who you are. So
awesome. Thanks a lot.
Awesome stuff. Take it easy, Judson. And we will follow up with Judson and Bugzeek and all those guys soon. Nice to have them on. And also, if you need to reach us, so today is Thursday. So if you need to reach us between now and next Tuesday, help@birddog.tv is where you can do that. And then otherwise, come hang out with us at on Tuesday, Thursdays at 11 to 12 or 11 to 12:48. And we'd be happy to chat with you about your NDI hopes and dreams and challenges and frustrations and all that stuff. And we can help sort out whatever it is that's going on. So reach out to us 11 to 12 on Tuesday, Thursdays here at birddogjon.tv. Or if you can't wait till then, help@birddog.tv and my team will help take care of you. Like I said on Tuesday, those guys are rock stars and they will get back to you as quick as we can. The auto email says 48 hours, but here's a little insider tip. Because you joined the show today, you're going to find out normally it doesn't take us 48 hours. It really just helps us cover the weekend because we don't work on weekends. So we will try and get back to you within 48 business hours. It will likely be quicker than that, and we'll give you a hand. So let us know what problems you got, what challenges you have, and we can help sort that out for you. All right, folks, take care of yourselves. Hopefully you're doing well, and we will see you guys hopefully on Tuesday at 11 o'clock. Take it easy, and we'll talk soon. Bye, guys.